People warned them. People said this will be coming. They will use this to apply to other accessories.
We are the Armed Attorneys. Today we're talking about forced reset triggers. They're back in a big way. There's a new lawsuit filed, a whole bunch of plaintiffs, and we got to talk about it. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And today's video is brought to you by our friends at LAS Concealment. Loaded and Safe Concealment makes quality holsters for casual daily carriers and hardcore shooters alike with their precision-formed Kydex gear.
Their proprietary moldings are CNC machined to give their products a unique feel while raising the level of quality.
LAS has been combat tested by special forces and overseas operations, with inside and outside the waistband options available and crazy customizations for thousands of lights and magazine combinations.
All made right here in the USA, so support the show and check them out at lasconcealment.com. They really are. I mean, we have our own, and they really are amazing, amazing holsters.
Also, our friends at Sonoran Desert Institute. Check them out at sdi.edu/armed-attorneys. They got online gunsmithing and armor courses. Take your hobby to the next level with Sonoran Desert Institute. Now, FRTs are back in a big way, new lawsuit dropping with a ton of plaintiffs. And so there is going to be a whole lot to this, but we got to check it out. If you want to follow along, the case number is 423-CV00830. Now, this is in the Northern District of Texas. This is where we've gotten a ton of great Second Amendment decisions. You know, this is permitless carry for 18, 19, 20-year-olds, the unconstitutionality of bump stocks, and that's going to play a role in this, and we'll talk about that. But who does this new case involve?
Well, this new case involves a couple of gun rights organizations, the National Association for Gun Rights, the Texas Gun Rights Group, as well as a couple of individuals, an individual who actually gave up his force reset triggers and another individual who wants to sell force reset triggers or previously sold force reset triggers before the ATF decided to say, hey, you're violating the law by possessing or selling force reset triggers.
Now, this all hinges around the definition of machine gun. Now, we know that the definition of machine gun, as provided by the Congress, lives in 18 U.S.C. 921, and that is a machine gun is any weapon which shoots, is designed to shoot, or can be readily restored to shoot automatically more than one shot without manual reloading by a single function of the trigger. The term shall also include the frame or receiver of any such weapon, any part that's designed and intended solely and exclusively, or combination of parts designed and intended for use in converting a weapon into a machine gun, any combination of parts from which a machine gun can be assembled if such parts are in the possession or under the control of the person. So this is the definition Congress gave us.
And it's a very straightforward definition. It basically says if you pull the trigger one time and it spits out multiple bullets, it's a machine gun. You pull the trigger one time and it shoots one bullet, then it is not a machine gun. So it is a very black and white, a very binary definition.
And so when we look at forced reset triggers, I guess a question a lot of folks have was, how are these things treated before? And we're going to talk about what the ATF has done and their involvement in this. You know, the lawsuit is against Merrick Garland, Steve Dettelbach, and the ATF. They're going to have some role in this. But how were these things treated prior to, the ATF getting involved?
They were treated as semi-automatic triggers. So basically, what is a forced reset trigger?
For those who are uninitiated, a forced reset trigger, most of these things can be dropped in. This is going to be from wide open triggers. It is a trigger control group that essentially allows the shooter to shoot more quickly. It forces the trigger forward, after the firearm discharges. When it's cycling, it pushes the trigger forward so that it's reset and can be pulled again very quickly. And you can check out some videos of these things online. I mean, people can shoot very quickly with a forced reset trigger. I'll still say it is slower than a machine gun. When we think of a traditional machine gun, I think you can tell a difference. It's somewhere between the two as far as, how fast can somebody pull the trigger. But then again, I've seen videos of folks who can pull triggers very fast, even faster than a forced reset trigger. But those people aren't machine guns.
Yeah, and the machine gun requires less work on the part of the user.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the keys. You're still having to physically manipulate this force reset trigger. It's just simply causing the mechanism to reset the trigger in a quicker fashion.
Yeah.
But it's not changing the function, the physical function of your finger still your finger still pulling the trigger each time a round goes off.
And I think that's an important part that you or important thing that you mentioned. It still requires action from the shooter. When we look at the bump stock litigation, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, and in the Fifth Circuit, bump stock's currently legal. And I think that was a big point of contention listening to the oral arguments on the bump stock case. Because I mean, obviously the justices, they're probably not going down to the range. They're not experimenting with these types of devices, but you could see that they very quickly honed in on the fact that the shooter needs to be pushing forward or applying pressure from their body in order to facilitate the bump stock to effectively work. And I think that that is kind of why they point that out in this complaint.
Yeah, I mean, it's the difference between a physical function by a human being and a strictly mechanical function
Yep.
by the weapon itself.
And we saw this out of the Trump administration, and this is where the ATF gets involved under the guises of public safety and in response to the Las Vegas shooting. They amended 27 CFR 478.11 and 479.11, and they added a whole bunch of text to the back end of the definition of machine gun. For the most part, those relevant sections they pretty much mirrored what the United States Congress provided for in the code. They were slightly different, but for all intents and purposes, they were virtually identical. But then they just add in this humongous chunk of text that's even longer than the original definition.
Yeah, it more than doubled the original definition just so they could expand it to get any kind of device that basically modifies the firearm to I guess act like or shoot like a machine gun. And so it's kind of a ridiculous expansion of the definition.
So they take the original machine gun definition and then they just shoehorn all this extra language into it. They say, for purposes of this definition, the term automatically, as it modifies shoots, is designed to shoot or can be readily restored to shoot, means functioning as the result of a self-acting or self-regulating mechanism that allows the firing of multiple rounds through a single function of the trigger, and single function of the trigger means a single pull of the trigger and analogous motion. The term machine gun includes bump stock type device, i.e., a device that allows a semi automatic firearm to shoot more than one shot with a single pull of the trigger by harnessing the recoil energy of the semi automatic firearm, which is affixed so that the trigger resets and continuously fires without additional physical manipulation of the trigger by the shooter. And I'm interested to see what folks have to say in the comments because I've seen arguments that, hey, the FRT, the FRT definition, we're not trying to shoehorn this in with this new bump stock rule change. We're trying to operate off of the original definition with this combination of parts, with this additional manipulation. Well, we definitely have that. So what's the argument?
First of all, how we got here was that this is exactly what people predicted when the definition was expanded in
Yep.
2018.
Exactly right.
Is that they said, oh, this is only going to apply to bump stocks. But they wrote it in such a way that people warned them. People said this will be coming. They will use this to apply to other accessories, even going so far as to say rubber bands could be regulated under this expansive definition. And of course, the government, the ATF, they go, oh, no. This is all about bump stocks. Well, sure enough, 2 years later, 3 years later, you get this expansion to FRTs.
So it started back in October 2021 with the inspection of the FRTs. The ATF determined amongst themselves, hey, we think this thing is a machine gun. And then quickly from that point forward, we get a letter to FFL saying, hey, these things are machine guns. If you want to hold on to your licenses, you better stop what you're doing. And then shortly thereafter, out to suspected purchasers, people who actually acquired these things, and widespread confiscation. I mean, we've probably talked to 100 folks just in our office who were contacted by the ATF. These things were confiscated, and we have an entire video on what to do should the ATF come knocking on your door asking for your FRT. We'll link that in the description below and at the very end of this video. I don't know what happened. What changed, Edwin, from 2018 to 2021?
Well, they just decided to start looking at every accessory that could possibly cause a semi-automatic weapon to fire faster, in which this whole process shows the insidiousness of the government. If you're sitting at home with your FRT that you bought either at a store or
And
online,
these things are expensive.
and suddenly you get a letter saying, "We know you have one of these." It's like, how does the government know I have one of these? It wasn't a firearm. I wasn't required to fill out a 4473. And that's because the government went to the websites and they went to the manufacturers
Yep.
and they strong armed them into turning over their list of clients, their list of people who had bought these things. So that's how they found out. So the thing about it is that it should be very upsetting to everyone that the government somehow found out who bought these FRTs and then started sending them letters threatening them that they needed to destroy them or turn them over to the ATF. Otherwise, they were going to be persecuted as a criminal.
So, what are the plaintiffs asking for in this case, and why are we hopeful, and why is this a case to watch? Well, like I said, this is the same court that struck down the bump stock regulation. So, what are we ultimately asking for? What are they asking the court for in this situation? They're asking for an injunction against the enforcement, criminal or civil, against the criminalization of FRTs. Essentially, we have the National Association of Gun Rights. They said they have 3,000 members in the Northern District. Texas Gun Rights. They say they have 10,000 folks in the Northern District looking for relief here. And there's I would say, a lot to it because, you know, if you go through the complaint, there's a lot of people who own quite a few of these things. And, FRT, $300, that's about the round number. We'll say it costs, some of these people had 10 of these things and they lost out on them. So we see that folks were absolutely harmed. I'm kind of wondering why they waited 2 years to sue. But we have people actually harmed. And then we have people who want to possess these items in the future. And that's what they're asking the court for some relief for.
Yeah, this is more than just an inconvenience. This is a takings. This is a takings of the property under threat of criminal prosecution. It's an outrage.
Yeah, but let's say you find yourself maybe you bought one of these FRTs from in cash. You didn't get a letter from the ATF. They didn't come knocking on your door. You're wondering, all right, where do I live in limbo? Because we do not have a temporary injunction or anything like that in place right now. Those things are considered hot lava. They're considered machine guns. And because we don't have time machines, they're not registered prior to May 19th, 1986. They are going to be considered temporarily, while this stuff is being litigated, they're considered unlawful. But we'll have a link to that video at the end of this video. But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, consider subscribing, hitting that like button, and help us fight the anti-2A algorithm by sharing this video. And as always, we enjoy your questions in the comment section down below. And until next time, we're the armed attorneys.
Probably not a good idea to post a YouTube video of you using one at the range
Sure.
or out on your property.
Yeah.